Hello everyone and welcome to Tariq and welcome to our special segment Tariq Classes for Class 12th History. And the chapter for today is Rebels and the Raj, the Revolt of 1857 and its representations. It was in the late afternoon on the 10th of May 1857. The sepoys broke out in mutiny. उन्होंने जो इन्फेंट्री से ये आग जो थी, ये चिंगारी थी, वो आग की तरह फैली एंड वो कैवलरी में भी जो सिपॉयज थे दे ऑल्सो जॉइंड इन एंड द बेल ऑफ आर्म्स वाज रैंसैक्ड. दे उन्होंने कब्ज़ा कर लिया. The British were looted, they were killed, the British officers were killed, and all the record office they were ransacked, और jails were also destroyed. and जो भी चीज़ एसोसिएटेड थी इंग्लिश से मतलब ब्रिटिश ऑफिशियल से वो सारी रैंसैक हो गई कर दी गई थी सिपॉयज़ ने. और जितने भी इंडियंस थे who were the representatives of the British, they were also looted and their shops were burnt. टेलीग्राफ भी जो था जो दिल्ली तक पहुंचता था वो लाइन भी काट दी गई थी. कोर्ट्स भी जला दिए गए थे. ट्रेजरी जला दी गई थी. 11th May 1857 को these sepoys they entered the Red Fort and this was the holy month of Ramzan. इस महीने the Muslim people they fast and बहादुर शाह जफ़र सुबह की बस अपनी सहरी करके ही नमाज़ पढ़ के आ ही रहे थे कि he heard a commotion and he saw the sepoys had gathered around him. The sepoys that gathered around Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was the last Mughal emperor, they told him that we have killed all the Englishmen in Meerut and we have come here because we were supposed to bite a cartridge that was coated with the fat of cow and pig. और ये हमारे धर्म के विरुद्ध है. हम हिंदू धर्म के विरुद्ध है और इस्लामिक धर्म के विरुद्ध है. Another set of sepoys also entered the fort and they were joined by the ordinary people. Europeans were attacked. People who were associated with him, they were also attacked. And they all, asked Bahadur Shah Zafar that we want your blessings. And he had no other option but to comply. And this sort of gave a legitimacy to the whole, to the whole mutiny. कि ये मुग़ल एम्पायर, ये मुग़ल बादशाह के अंडर ये म्यूटनी फैलेगी और ये रिबेलियन बनेगी. 12 और 13 मई तक तो नॉर्थ इंडिया में कोई चहल नहीं थी, पर जैसे ही पता चला कि बहादुर शाह जफ़र जो लास्ट मुग़ल एम्पर है उनकी ब्लेसिंग मिल गई हैं, तो ये जो रिबेलियन है वो फैलता चला गया वेस्ट दिल्ली टू इन द गैंजेटिक वैली ऑल्सो. तो ये बस नॉर्दर्न पार्ट ऑफ द सब कॉन्टिनेंट में फैलता चला गया और दिल्ली भी ब्रिटिश के हाथों से निकल गई थी उस टाइम.
The first topic is the pattern of the rebellion. Now, if one were to place the events of 1857 of the revolt in chronological order, it would appear as if कि जैसे ही एक जगह से दूसरी जगह the news of the mutiny travelled, वहीं पे the mutiny spread. And this pattern was similar over all the cantonments that revolted. Generally, the action that signaled that the revolt had reached your cantonment was the firing of the evening gun, or in some instances, the sounding of the bugle. सबसे पहले, the bell of arms, which was where all the weaponry was stored, that would be seized. उसके बाद the treasury would be attacked, and then after that all institutions, all government institutions that were connected to the British, they were attacked. The people were attacked there. So the buildings that were attacked were the jail, the treasury, the telegraph office, any other offices, the bungalows, and then the records were also wiped out. Everyone that was connected to the British, they were attacked, and there were calls in Hindi, in Urdu, and in Persian for people to unite across communities and exterminate the Firangis. And Firangis was a term used for the foreigners, for white foreigners, and oftentimes it was in a derogatory manner. Most times in Indian texts, whenever an outsider was mentioned, it was always with a derogatory tone, and that was also the case with the Firangis. जैसे ही the common public would join the revolt, the sphere of attack expanded. So it was not just your British officials and those that were holding the power in the government, but also people with power, because they were also seen as oppressors. So the big money lenders or even rich people, they were also attacked because they were seen as siding with the government or with the British government, and it felt like they were anti people. In places like Lucknow, Kanpur, and Bareilly, big money lenders and the rich were, of course, attacked. Their houses were vandalized, they were looted, and because they were seen as allies of the British. So, as people joined the Sepoy Mutiny, which is how it started, but it quickly rose to a rebellion that was against any form of authority or anything that seemed oppressive. In the months of May and June, the British were yet not able to counter or control the rebellion. And in fact, in one of the records, one British officer had recorded that the British control over the Indians fell like a house of cards. But the British were not the only people that suffered during this time. Even regular people had some amount of difficulty. खाने और पानी की प्रॉब्लम भी हो रही थी जहाँ जहाँ पे रिवोल्ट्स हो रहे थे. It is evident that a lot of planning and coordination went into the revolt of 1857, and that is why it lasted the time that it did, and that is why it spread to the extent that it did. And this is evident when in early May there was communication that was received from the 7th Awadh Irregular Cavalry, who, after they had decided to not use the cartridges that were supposedly covered in the fat of cows and pigs, they wrote to the 48th Native Infantry saying that they have acted upon their faith and they have refused to use the cartridges, and now they await for the further news or further information from the 48th Native Infantry. अब हमको ये पता है कि जो रिवोल्ट था, it was planned and coordinated, but how was it planned, or who was behind the planning, or who led these actions, that is a little difficult to ascertain, क्योंकि उसके हमारे पास records नहीं हैं. Most of the communication was spread verbally or through perishable materials, as we will see later in the chapter. But even then, Indians did not have a policy of recording a lot of their personal histories.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that happened during that time, the point of view of the rebels is more or less lost, but some of it is still there as secondary evidence, and we get information from that. For instance, we get to know from the account of one Captain Hearsay, who was a military police officer in Awadh. He was during the time of the mutiny. Now, when the mutiny was happening, he was given protection by his own his own police subordinates, Indian subordinates. And when the 41st Native Infantry, who was also stationed in the same locality, asked the police to hand over Hearsay to them because they had killed all English officials, and the same should be dealt to Hearsay, or he should be punished, or he should be imprisoned, the police force declined to do so. And so it was decided that the matter would be settled by holding a panchayat, drawing officers from each native regiment that was present there to come to a decision regarding Captain Hearsay. Charles Ball, who wrote about the beginnings of the uprising, also mentions that in the Kanpur Sepoy lines, having a panchayat was a nightly ritual, and it was very common for the sepoys to gather towards the evening together and hold a panchayat. And since most of them came from the same village, or they belonged to the same caste, and they were they were people of the same origin, more or less, so it was very likely that they would gather together and decide on their future, decide on what went through, and they would make decisions together, or they would plan the future together. And so the uprising was very much a product of mutual discussion between the sepoys.
To fight the British, a sort of leadership and organization was very important. So a lot of these sepoys, they turned towards the leaders who were already leaders before the British conquest. Just for example, how the sepoys, they went to the Red Fort and they asked Bahadur Shah Zafar to bless them and also be a kind of an image, a kind of a, that this rebellion is under the umbrella of the Mughal Empire. So somewhere that legitimacy is there कि जी ये मुग़ल बादशाह के ही अंडर हो रहा है, हमारे जो बादशाह, जो मुग़ल डायनेस्टी चली आ रही थी, somewhere वो एक कनेक्शन बनता है. And a lot of these soldiers also did it when they entered the Red Fort. They defied all the customs and etiquettes, and Bahadur Shah Zafar had no other option but to comply, and he agreed and he blessed them. बाकी जगहों में भी, फॉर एग्जांपल कानपुर के अंदर नाना साहेब, हु वाज द सक्सेसर टू बाजीराव पेशवा द सेकंड, ही वाज आस्क्ड टू बिकम देयर लीडर. जब हम झांसी की बात करते हैं तो झांसी की रानी लक्ष्मीबाई वाज आल्सो आस्क्ड एंड फोर्स्ड टू बिकम देयर लीडर एंड टेक चार्ज. सिमिलरली इन बिहार, अ प्लेस कॉल्ड आरा, वहाँ पे भी कुंवर सिंह नाम के एक ज़मींदार थे, वो ही आल्सो टुक चार्ज. अवध की जब हम बात करते हैं, आफ्टर द डिस्प्लेसमेंट ऑफ वाजिद अली शाह, हु वाज द लास्ट नवाब, the whole this was very fresh in the memory of the people of Awadh. तो उन्होंने जब जब वहाँ पे म्यूटनी आई, वहाँ जब वो रिबेलियन शुरू हुआ, एंड आफ्टर द फॉल ऑफ द ब्रिटिश रूल, टू सेलिब्रेट दैट दे हेल्ड British Qadr, and who was the successor of the Nawab. Similarly, not everywhere you had these rulers or local zamindars or local rulers who would take charge. There were men and women also, local men and women who took charge. Religious leaders took charge. एक कहते हैं मेरठ में एक फ़कीर होते थे, he would ride the elephants and he would convince people were sepoys would come and meet him. Also there were local religious leaders who would ask people to defy the British, we have to destroy the British to get our country back. So you had these leaders, you had these local people. बाकी जगहों में भी local leaders थे, ज़मींदार थे, peasants थे, शाह अमल थे, who was there in Uttar Pradesh. He also mobilized people. Then you had the tribals who were also mobilized in the Chota Nagpur region. वहाँ पे भी people were mobilized, tribes were mobilized. So everywhere there were not rulers. जहाँ भी आपको कोई भी इंसान दिखता था जिसका थोड़ा इन्फ्लुएंस है, sepoys would meet them and pacts were formed. Rumors and prophecies, they played a very important role जब हम इस म्यूटनी की बात करते हैं. और ये जो म्यूटनी है, how it is, how it spread and it became a rebellion. तो basically जो बात है that made the sepoys angry was that कि जो cartridges थे, जो they were coated with the fat of pig and cow, and they were supposed to bite it with their teeth. So that was something for the people, especially Hindus and Muslims, उनको लगता था हमारा धर्म भ्रष्ट हो जाएगा. बट ये भी कहते उनके lot of the British officers have tried to claim कि ये भी एक rumor था. One such rumor was that कि एक Captain Wright थे, he was a commander of the rifle instruction. He reported that there was a low person belonging to a very low caste, he was a Khalasi, and he used to work in a magazine in Dum Dum, and तो he asked a Brahmin sepoy for water जो उनके लोटे में था. तो ब्राह्मण ने बोला नहीं, मेरा ये धर्म भ्रष्ट हो जाएगा, मैं तुमको पानी नहीं दूंगा. तो वो जवाब देता है कि तुम्हारा तब धर्म भ्रष्ट नहीं हुआ जब तुमने उन कार्ट्रिजेस को अपने दांतों से तोड़ा है, जो उस कार्ट्रिज के ऊपर जो ग्रीस है वो काव फैट और पिग फैट की है. सो ये जो बात उन्होंने कही, ये एक चिंगारी थी और वो एक आग की तरह फैलनी शुरू हो गई थी. सो दिस वॉज वन ऑफ द रूमर्स दैट, एंड द ब्रिटिश ट्राइड टू कन्विंस द सेपॉयज, नहीं ऐसा नहीं है, इट्स जस्ट अ रूमर. बट there was no turning back because the Hindu and the Muslim sepoys, they felt that the British want to take away their tradition, they take away their customs from them. So they are trying to वो एक जैसे कहते हैं कि हमारा धर्म भ्रष्ट करना चाहते हैं. एक और रूमर ये था that angered the people was that कि the British had mixed the bone of pig and cow with the atta, जो wheat flour है, and that has been distributed in the markets. So Indians, they stopped eating आटा, दे स्टॉप टेकिंग आटा, एंड उनको ये लगने लगा कि ऐसे करके दे वांट टू कन्वर्ट इंडियंस इनटू क्रिश्चियनिटी. सो दैट वाज आल्सो द रीज़न फॉर दिस mutiny, and the British tried to control that, but it was all in vain, and they all felt that the British Empire would come to an end on the 100th year of the Battle of Plassey, which took place on 23rd June 1757. तो उनको लगता था अब 1857 है, अब तो British rule end होगा ही होगा. So as we all know that Indians never wrote the history and Indians never recorded the history. तो एक perishable mode of communication था, that were the chapatis. Chapatis were being distributed from village to village. Village headman या watchman को दिया जाता था, वो जाके दूसरे विलेज में देता था, एंड उसको बोला जाता था 5 और चपाती बना के दूसरे विलेज में पहुंचा दो. उसका हमको मतलब नहीं पता, अभी भी नहीं पता कि इसका क्या मीनिंग था, बट येस इट वाज समथिंग रिलेटेड कि आप एक मैसेज दे रहे हो कि आप हीविल, एक रिवोल्ट आ रहा है, एंड आप लोगों को इस मैसेज देते जा रहे हो, बट एग्जैक्ट द मीनिंग वी डोंट नो.
अभी तक हमने देखा कि द रिवोल्ट स्टार्टेड मोर और लेस बिकॉज ऑफ ए रूमर that was circulated in the sepoy camps that the sepoys would have to bite through this film of fat on the cartridges that was supposedly made out of the fat of pigs and cows, and that in turn would affect their religion. So but ये तो रूमर है ना, इसका हमको ये नहीं पता कि ये सच है कि झूठ है, और एक ही रूमर में इतना बड़ा रिवोल्ट हो गया, ये कैसे पॉसिबल है. In historical writing, it is very difficult to ascertain whether a rumor or a prophecy is true or if it is based on facts, and that is why it gets very difficult to perceive a rumor as a historical happenstance in a way. But what the rumor does, even if we can't verify the history behind it or the fact behind it, is how it plays with the emotions of the people that it affects, or the emotions that it brings out of people, because that, even if the rumor is not factually correct, it highlights or it brings out a certain reaction from the people, and that is how you sort of map out the power of that rumor. And it is through these rumors that we get to know of the people's fears or apprehensions or their faith and their convictions. Because अब जाहिर सी बात है कि अगर एक कोई rumor है and if it directly affects me, then I will talk to people about it, in turn spreading the rumor and also my fears and apprehensions and what I believe through the rumor, and that is how it picks up the pace. Till the time a rumor does not speak with the person in question, till the time it doesn't affect, the rumor will have no value, it does not hold power. But when it is something to do with something you cherish or something that you are afraid of, then it is like it's arsenal for the rumor to spread. और कहने की बात है कि एक रूमर ने इतना बड़ा रिवोल्ट स्टार्ट कर दिया, तो you will also think, यार, was there not one person who had the wherewithal to think, यार शायद ऐसा नहीं है, शायद कुछ और है. But the strength of the rumor, specifically the one related to the revolt of the 1857, lies in the context of the period. Now, by the 1820s, under the leadership of the Governor General of the time, Lord Bentinck, there was a move to reform the Indian system, and this was done by introducing reforms, of course, but then also Western philosophies and Western education, and with the help of certain Indian allies or the rich class of the Indian society. Western schools were formed, and Western colleges were formed that would preach Western ideas and also liberal arts. And this was like, there was a idea of reforming the Indian system, but it was not done in a way that was really welcoming to the Indian population, who felt as if something was being taken away from them. Although certain reforms were well placed, like the abolition of sati, which happened in 1829, and also they put forth the remarriage of widows.
But this was not just done by them. So the abolition of sati and remarriages of widow, it was also kind of एक फरमान जारी किया गया था during the time of Akbar as well. So Akbar also advocated widow remarriage and abolition of sati.
Now, the introduction of reforms and Western education was on one side of the spectrum, but on the other side, on a variety of plays, jaise if they would quote misgovernment and also not recognizing adoption as an heir for or refusing to recognize adoption. They would annex territories. So they already annexed Awadh, and then also major principalities like Jhansi and Satara. And once they annexed these principalities, they would introduce reforms and reorganize the complete structure. And oftentimes, the peasant or the common person had to face the brunt of it.
Yeah, and this was, I think, the doctrine of lapse, where you would not recognize the adopted son of a king or a queen to be the next heir. And how regressive! And at one point, you see them getting reforms and abolishing various acts and practices that were really demonic. But on the other hand, they had these policies that were so regressive. I think it was mostly because whatever suited their rule, so they would get reforms in that manner.
Whatever benefited them is what they reformed on. So not only the system of administration was changed, but their own customs regarding the land or revenue assessment was also being changed. And oftentimes what the peasant or the common person felt was that the connection that they had towards the local king or the local talukdar, zamindar, that was taken away. Then the social economic traditions were being tampered with, or they were being completely broken off. And on top of that, the land revenue assessment was, it was horrible, and the peasant was really suffering. So they saw that what they held sacred, what they had a lot of belief attached to, that was being snatched away from them, and it was being replaced by a regime that was cold, alien, and also oppressive. And that is why the rebellion grew to the power that it did, because there was a level of distrust towards the British officials, especially when they were doing away with their everyday life. Additionally, the work done by the Christian missionaries was also seen as something of a threat, because आपका everyday जो life था, your customs and beliefs were attacked, your revenue and your well-being was attacked, but now it seemed as if your religion, your dharam was also getting attacked. So in this context, the rumors played a very important role in leading the revolt to the height that it reached.
The next topic is Awadh in revolt. In 1851, Governor General Lord Dalhousie, he describes Awadh as a cherry that will drop into our mouth one day. And in 1856, the British, they annex Awadh. In 1801, the British imposed subsidiary alliance on Awadh, and that actually stated that the Nawab, who was the last Nawab, Wajid Ali Shah, he will have to remove his contingent, and the British will get their own troops and they will be stationed in Awadh. A company resident would be stationed at the court of the Nawab, and everything will go according to him. Nawab also lost a lot of his powers, and especially the powers to subdue the talukdars, strong talukdars or rebellious chiefs. Everything was done by the British. So in a way, the Nawab, he lost a lot of his powers over his own area, over his own Awadh, all thanks to the British. In the meanwhile, the British, they became very interested in annexing Awadh, because they thought of growing indigo and cotton, and also making this place as a principal market in the 1850s. Ush time it was known as the Upper India, and by the 1850s the British had annexed Maratha land. They had also annexed Punjab, Bengal, Karnataka and Doab region, and soon in 56 they annexed Awadh. Lord Dalhousie, when he annexed Awadh, chaos was you could see chaos all around in Awadh. People were crying, they were not happy with this decision, and because the Nawab was dethroned and he was sent, he was exiled to Calcutta, and the people of Awadh, they started singing songs of lament and they went with him. They kind of accompanied the Nawab till Kanpur when he was going on his way to Calcutta. The Nawab was dethroned on the pretext that he was misgoverning his own principality, and they thought that he was not very popular amongst his own people, and they were wrong. He was really loved by his own people. That is why they accompanied him on his journey to Calcutta. There was widespread grief, and contemporary historians have, recorded people singing songs like, "The life was gone out of the body, and the body of this town had been left lifeless." एक भी जगह नुक्कड़ कोना कूंचा नहीं था जहाँ पे लोग रो नहीं रहे थे. उनका मानना था, "The honorable English came and took the country. अंग्रेज बहादुर आए, मुल्क लाए लिन्हो." जाहिर सी बात है, when the Nawab was dethroned, even his court culture was kind of removed. So उसकी वजह से all the artists, artisans, the musicians, the dancers, the cooks, they were also jobless, because जब नवाब ही नहीं थे तो वो कोर्ट कल्चर कहाँ से रहेगा. A chain of grievances in Awadh linked the prince, the talukdars, the peasants and the sepoy. ये चारों जो ग्रुप्स हैं, इनका दुश्मन एक था, वो थे द ब्रिटिश, और उनका मुद्दा ये था कि we need to protect ourselves and we need to end their rule. They all saw the British as an alien force, forcing their policies on us without our consent. ना सिर्फ जब annexation हुआ तो जो नवाब थे वही नहीं सिर्फ डिथ्रोन हुए थे, the talukdars were also kind of dispossessed. So the talukdars were really important and powerful people in the countryside. They held armed retainers, they had their own forts, they also enjoyed some amount of autonomy and power, until and unless they accepted the sovereignty of the Nawab and they gave him revenue and they gave him tribute. But जब British ने annex किया अवध को, so they could not tolerate that this group of people was also exercising power. So they kind of disarmed them and destroyed their forts. साथ ही साथ उन्होंने रेवेन्यू पॉलिसीज़ भी यहाँ पे इम्पोज करनी शुरू कर दी, स्पेशली द समरी सेटलमेंट ऑफ 1856, एंड उसके हिसाब से दे लॉस्ट देयर लैंड, दे लॉस्ट देयर ऑटोनॉमी ओवर देयर ओन विलेजेस. अकॉर्डिंग टू द ब्रिटिश, दे थॉट दैट these talukdars, they exercised immense power and they exploited the people who were the actually owners of the land. So they were pretty fraud, and they wanted to take away their power so that they could save the actual owners of the land. Before the coming of the British, the talukdars held 67% of the villages, but उनकी summary settlement के बाद सिर्फ 38% उनके अंडर आना शुरू हो गया था. Southern अवध के talukdars were worse hit. आधे से ज़्यादा उनके विलेजेस जो थे वो उनके हाथ से निकल चुके थे. रेवेन्यू ऑफिशियल्स का ये मानना था कि अगर हम इनको हटा देंगे, जो एक्चुअल ओनर्स थे, जो पेजेंट्स थे, वी कैन डील विद देम and not directly and not with the talukdars, and we'll get the revenue also and we will help them to evolve also. But that didn't happen. Even after the removal of the talukdars in various parts, the peasantries were still not happy. Even when the British started to have direct contact with them, they were still exploited and the lands were overassessed, and 30 से 70% इंक्रीज़ हुआ था रेवेन्यू में. ऑब्वियसली अगर आप अपनी मर्ज़ी से रेवेन्यू डिमांड कर रहे थे, और नीदर द पेजेंट्री वाज हैप्पी, नीदर तालुकदार्स वर हैप्पी. सो इनकी जॉइंट ग्रीवियंसेस थी, तालुकदार्स की, प्रिंस की, रॉयल्टी की, सिपॉयज़ की, peasantry की that you could see in the revolt of 1857. This possession of the तालुकदार्स meant पूरा जो social structure था वो टूट गया था. जो लॉयल्टी ऑफ पेट्रनेज थी, जो पेजेंट्स को तालुकदार से बांधती थी, वो टूट गई. साथ में ही येस दे वर ऑप्रेसिव टुवर्ड्स देयर पेजेंट्स, बट they were also their father figures. They extracted a lot from the peasantry, but they would always be there for them when the time whenever the peasantry they needed them. But अब इनको हटाने के बाद जब British officials का direct contact शुरू हुआ with the peasants, now they were the ones who were over accessing the land, and they were not there when the peasants needed them. And obviously they always found them as an alien force, that is trying to make a connection with them, and they didn't feel that they will be able to ask for anything, because वो bond ही नहीं था. वो एक फिरंगीत है जो आके हमसे टैक्स ले रहा है, एंड इफ दे वांट समथिंग, दे नीड समथिंग, ही कैन नॉट आस्क हिम. स्पेशली फेस्टिवल्स के टाइम पे या शादी के टाइम पे और सम फंक्शन के टाइम पे दे वुड टेक लोन्स फ्रॉम द तालुकदार्स, एंड तालुकदार्स वुड विलिंगली गिव द लोन बिकॉज दे अंडरस्टैंड द कस्टम्स एंड द ट्रेडिशंस. बट द सेम वॉज नॉट expected out of the Firangs. 1857 में जो rebellion था वो intense था, especially अवध में. And lot of these talukdars they were joined by their peasantry in a fight against the British. They also joined Hazrat Mahal, Begum Hazrat Mahal, who she was the wife of the Nawab, and they were loyal to her and they were loyal to the Nawab, and they remained with her even at the time of the defeat. जो grievances थे peasants के, that was carried over into the sepoy lines. The sepoys, they were also not happy with the whole structure, hierarchical structure of the forces. They were not given good salaries. They were not given leaves whenever they wanted to go for some ceremony or some functions, and a lot other things also added on in the 1850s. This was also because the relationship of the British officials with the sepoys underwent a drastic change. In the pre-1857 time, especially in the 1820s, the relationship between a sepoy and a white officer was of that of a friend. They were friendly with each other. They would take the white officers would be a part of the leisure activities. They would take part in wrestling. They'll take part in hawking or fencing, they would be a part of their customs and traditions. They were well versed in Hindustani and they understood the custom and traditions, and they were more like a disciplinarian and a father figure rolled into one. But when in the 1850s there was a change, the British officers, they started to treat themselves as superior and the sepoys as inferior. This was all on the basis of racial ground, and obviously there was a drastic change in the behavior with the sepoys. There was sometimes there would be fights with them. They would abuse them. They would hit them, physically hit them, and वो जो एक friendship थी वो थोड़ी distance में तब्दील होनी शुरू हो गई थी, and trust suspicion बन गया था. सिपॉयज़ और जो रूरल वर्ल्ड थी नॉर्थ इंडिया की, उनकी बहुत एक लिंक था, बहुत सॉलिड लिंक था, क्योंकि जो बंगाल आर्मी में मैक्सिमम जो रिक्रूट होते थे सोल्जर्स, जो सिपॉयज़ होते थे, वो ईस्टर्न यूपी और अवध से होते थे, एंड दिस एरिया वाज आल्सो नोन एज नर्सरी ऑफ द बंगाल आर्मी. और साथ ही साथ में जो विलेजर्स के जो इनके फैमिलीज़ की ग्रीवियंसेस थी, इनकी जो इनसिक्योरिटीज़ थी रिलेटेड टू दी पॉलिसीज ऑफ द ब्रिटिश, दैट वाज काइंड ऑफ the message was transported to the sepoy lines, and the sepoys that they were facing, the change in attitude that they were facing, the abuses they were facing and not giving leaves, and the kind of environment they were facing, that message was also transported to the village. तो ये एक कलेक्टिव जो आपका काफ़ी सालों का जो एक नफ़रत थी अगेंस्ट दिस एलियन फोर्स, वो आपको 1857 रिवोल्ट में दिखाई देती है. When the sepoys defied their officers before this mutiny took place, they were joined by the village brethren, they were joined by the peasantry, they were joined by the local people. So this is because they have their grievances were collective. जो उनकी नाराज़गी थी towards the British rule, वो एक collective नाराज़गी थी.
The next topic is what the rebels wanted. Now, The sources that we have for the rebellion of the revolt of 1857 is mostly from the British side, who recorded the revolt, and but they recorded it from their perspective, obviously. What we know of the revolt from the Indian side is very scant. एक तो जैसे हमने पहले बात की कि Indians were not very proficient in recording their own history, but in addition to this was that most of the people who were engaged in the rebellion were sepoys, and not all of them were literate. कुछ जो literate थे उनके भी direct personal recordings नहीं हैं, but we have sources in the form of ishtihars or advertisements and newsletters that convey what the rebels wanted. Even so, much of the history is one-sided, and that side mostly favors the British, who saw themselves as the victors of the rebellion, of course, but they also saw the rebels as ungrateful and barbaric. So that plays a lot of what was painted of the revolt, especially to the British masses, because see, their reactions also have a lot to play on what was happening in India at the time. Of the proclamations or ishtihars that we do have access to, they called for the unification of all Indians regardless of their religion or their caste or creed, and they called for them to come under one umbrella to fight off the British. Most of the proclamations were given under Muslim rulers, especially Bahadur Shah Zafar, and even then they catered a lot to the Hindu population, and the belief was that whatever is to win is for all the communities, or both the major communities, the Hindus and the Muslims, and the losses that would be suffered would affect both these communities equally. So जीत भी दोनों की थी, हार भी दोनों की थी. So that is why they came together. Under Bahadur Shah Zafar, the proclamation in fact unified people under the name of Muhammad and Mahavir, and it is very interesting that they all called to unify people against the British, to return to the pre-British time, to the Mughal time, and that is what they saw as a just rule. In a way, they wanted to go back to that. And interestingly, if we can just take a mini segue over here, during this time, so as early or as late as 1857 is when we see the common people gathering together regardless of their religions. वो हिंदू मुसलमान का वो भेदभाव नहीं था, and they were calling back to go to the pre-British time, to the Badshahi, to the times of the Mughals. And I mean, it is something to ponder on कि अगर 1857 तक the Mughals were considered the better rulers as compared to British, what happened in the next 100-200 years, that in the present day when we see them as invaders, and we see them as the villains. So what exactly has happened in the 200 years that followed the 1857 rebellion?
The thing is that people always get confused with the way the Turkish and the Mughal rule was, and they compare it to the British rule, and they come to a conclusion कि दोनों बाहर से ही आए, तीनों जो ये रूल था वो बाहर से आया था. Yes, बाहर से आया था, but इन तीनों डायनेस्टी के जो रूल की बात करें उसमें बहुत अंतर था, भेद था, because when the Turks came, they conquered, they stayed here, their policies were for this country, it was not a country, for the subcontinent and the areas they conquered, and the policies were to get maximum out of the land, and also to do various projects where that would help in flourishing, this land will flourish. Same with the Mughals, they came to settle here. When the British came, their main policy was to get all the revenues and the money and the gold out of this country and send it to their mother country, that was England, and not to do much about the development as such. Even if they got railways, they got other things, it was not for us as Indians, it was for them, because so that if they have to transport bulk of goods and cargoes or anything, it will be easier for them, right? It was for their own benefit, not for the common man. So this was the difference. The drain of wealth was taking place, deindustrialization was taking place for all their benefit and for their mother country. Not only India, even outside world, like outside other countries, the main mudda was to extract the money, the bullion or the resources, and get it to their own country. And they knew for some reason that they're not going to be colonizers, or they're not going to be colonizers for a very long time. Ultimately they will, when all the resources will be diminished and
when there's nothing left to extract,
and when they'll create chaos, they will get back to their own country. So that was this is how different it was. And they never, initially, yes, they married when they came in the 1700s, in the early 1800s, they married Indians, but they still had that racial thing, that we are whites, you are of the others.
yeah,
Right? And they always thought we are barbarians, and we didn't know how to live, we didn't know how to eat, uncivilized. मतलब ऐसे ही हैं, हम civilized हैं.
And most of that has been internalized now, where we ourselves think that the white man or that the Western civilization is better. I don't think any civilization is better than the other. Each have their own strengths and their weaknesses, but no one civilization is on top of the other.
So, and they always thought the other civilizations are inferior, we are the best. It was not only with them, it was with all the European colonial aspect. When you talk about in general, they all thought the other civilizations are not fit to exist,
to rule themselves
or to exist. So, but that was not the case with the Turks, with the Mughals, because they came, they settled, they got their culture, they intermingled with the existing culture. There was this the birth of Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. There was art and architecture. There was music, food, literature. Birth of Urdu. So many other factors. They came and they settled and they lived for 1,000 years even before the British came. So वो अलग नहीं हो सकते है ना, वो इधर के ही थे. अगर अकबर यहीं उनका जन्म हुआ था, बाकी रूलर्स का यहीं जन्म हुआ था, तो वो बाहर के कैसे हो गए?
Coming back to the brotherhood between the Hindus and the Muslims, despite British attempts to divide the two during the uprising, the unity and the brotherhood, it persevered, and that was a threat to the British. So in Bareilly, which is the town in UP, it is said, or there are records, that the British spent nearly 50,000 to separate the two communities, but the plan failed. But I think it is very telling that something that the British were not able to do during the revolt, which is also called the First War of Independence, वहाँ से ही एक seed जो था differentiation का, that sort of grew, and which we will also see in the next chapters, and that is something that was planted, and we are still dealing with the effects of the policy of divide and rule, so to say. In present day, in a democracy, despite being an independent country, we still hold on to the vestiges of the colonial rule, which is, I think, very sad.
But it's more now.
Yeah. So the proclamations that were made, the ishtihars that were printed, they called for a complete boycott to nahi, but they were completely against anything that the British stood for, because anything that came with the British was seen as oppressive. The British themselves were oppressors, right? So they called इसको फिरंगी राज बोलते थे, or they wanted to completely do away with it and go back to how it was before the British, because when the British came, what particularly irked the people, at which played a very important role in the revolt, was how the land settlements had taken place, because you had dispossessed a lot of people, both big landholders and small landholders, and जो आर्टिजन्स थे, जो वीवर्स थे, उनकी भी लाइवलीहुड चली गई थी. सो नॉट ओनली वर द पेजेंट्स सफरिंग, द आर्टिजन्स वर सफरिंग, द पीपल दैट वर एम्प्लॉयड बाय द कोर्ट्स, which we saw when they lost their jobs, they were also suffering. So all in all, the British Raj or the Firangi Raj, that stood for oppression, and they wanted to completely do away with it and just be done with it. They just wanted nothing to do with it and all the symbols that they associated with the Firangi Raj. The rebels felt that the British were, or people that were associated with the British, not just the British but even Indians that they felt supported the British, they could not be trusted. Obviously अगर आपकी peasantry suffer कर रही है, आपके sepoys they are not happy, you have displaced both big and small landowners and you've implemented your own revenue policies that are harming the peasant a lot more than they used to be, driving them further into debt. Also the commerce, the foreign commerce activities had again displaced the local or Indian artisans and weavers, so they were also suffering. So they just wanted, the rebels wanted to do away with the Firangi Raj completely. Now all this in the background of the Christian missionaries and their activities in the subcontinent also led to this environment of anxiety that was there, because now the people felt that their religion was also in danger. So along with all that was happening, अब आपके इकोनॉमी में भी इशू हो रही है, आपके जॉब्स में भी इशू हो रही है, आपके खाने में भी इन अ वे इशू हो रही है, बिकॉज इफ योर फार्मर्स आर नॉट doing well, that also affected you. And then also your religion is, you feel like your religion is under danger or it's under threat. And in this situation of mistrust and anxiety and fear, it was very easy for rumors to take the shape that they did and to in turn shape the revolt to what it became. Because then all of a sudden it wasn't just your mistrust towards the current ruling force, but it was also this call to safeguard your livelihood, to safeguard your respect, and to fight for what you believe is right, to fight for the better good, to go back to happier times. And that is what the revolt symbolized. But what we don't find in the proclamations as much is how the revolt impacted the local power structures as well. So there were places where the mutineers or the rebels, they also attacked the house of the moneylenders, and they would burn their account books or their ledgers, and they would put their properties to fire. And this somehow also represented that the revolt was not just against the British oppressors, but it was against all oppressors. So maybe they were wanting to discard all oppressive regimes and come together to maybe form a more egalitarian society or a better society. And these acts were not really seen in the proclamation that were only against the British Raj, and they were still in the proclamations that you will read in the sources in the book. You can still see that there was some sympathy towards the zamindars, but then most of these actions were also against moneylenders, so they were a class apart from the zamindars. So one should not confuse themselves with the zamindars and the moneylenders. Oftentimes moneylenders were also outsiders, so they were not people of the village or town or the community. They settled outside of that, and then there was also that added mistrust, and that just, it sort of became like an extension of the mistrust towards the British.
Yeah, because moneylenders generally, when they give money, they lend money, then they'll put interest on it, and they'll keep adding that to it. And when the peasant is generally not able to pay back, so that mistrust is there. Yes, and with the zamindars, because zamindars तो पुश्तों से एक ही village के हैं, दो वो भी oppressive होते थे, but वो एक father type figure भी थोड़ा symbolize करते थे,
and not all zamindars were somehow bad. And the peasants would also then, if the zamindar was too cruel, they would leave that village and go settle elsewhere. And many times the zamindar would also understand कि okay, it's not possible to meet the revenue demands, let's not do that. Or if there is some emergency, or there is some family function, or there is some festival, the zamindar would also make account of that. whereas that was not the case with the moneylender, because the moneylender needed money. And as we have seen in the previous chapter, with the British Raj and the moneylenders, there was a breakdown of social norms. So they were also charging a lot of interest on the
Yeah.
money that they were lending out. Now, once the rebellion was underway and the rebels captured, British property, and or they, killed British officials, did that end the rebellion? No. For a rebellion to be successful, it has to also have an afterthought or an after plan, what to do after the rebellion. And we see in the case of, in places like Delhi, Lucknow, and Kanpur, they had already tried to establish an alternate form of structure and of authority, which was meant to replace the British, or in a way to go back to the pre-British times. And of course, it wasn't really successful for a very long time, because the British then also retaliated. But it is worth mentioning that after the rebellion, there was there was a plan to sort of bring normalcy back. What were these plans to bring back normalcy? Leaders were elected, and court appointments were then again made. The soldiers were paid. Orders were sent out to stop the looting of places, and just to try to bring or to control everything again, to start functioning properly, was something that I think they had begun to do. And kahin pe to काफ़ी महीनों तक they could succeed as well. The Mughal Empire had become a symbol for all that was lost. So during the time of the rebellion, there were constant pleas to go back to the functioning, and that we see in how they made court appointments also, how revenue was collected, how troops were paid. Most of the administrative structures that were made by the rebels during this time were made to meet the needs of the war, but even so they were not able to withstand the British onslaught or the British response to the rebellion for a very long time. In Meerut, or in Awadh, which was the place where the rebellion lasted the longest, that still held some of the resistance till the late years of 1857, even moving on to 1858, where they really held their ground, and they tried to expel the British, at least from Awadh. But even then, the British were able to take back Awadh.
The next topic is repression. It was very difficult for the British to subdue the rebellion, and they had to pass various laws to end or to quell the insurgency. In the months of May, June in 1857, martial law was passed in the northern part of the subcontinent. The British officials as well as the local Britons were asked to try or to punish any Indians if they suspected that they are a part of the rebellion. So if they are part of the rebellion, they were asked to punish them, and there was only one punishment for this, and that was death. The British, like the rebels, they recognized the value, the symbolic value of Delhi. तो उन्होंने दो फौजों को, one from Calcutta, and it was a two-pronged attack. So one was from Calcutta and one was from Punjab. The two forces came and reached northern part of northern India. Well, they reached Delhi. And according to the text, it states that the one that came from Patiala, it was more peaceful. The one that came from Punjab was more peaceful, but it wasn't, because there are various eyewitness accounts of the of the people, the Indian people. They have written books about the 1857 rebellion. It's called Dastan-e-Gadar. So उसमें आपको पता चलता है कि बहुत ही खूंखार वे से और बहुत ही bloodshed हुआ था उस टाइम पे when they came to reconquer Delhi, when the forces came from Punjab and Calcutta. Red Fort was completely, the people of Red Fort, the prince and the princesses, they were all not the princesses but the Mughal princes were killed. वो घोड़े पे भाग रहे थे. They were leaving their kids to somebody so that you'd go and take our kids to a safer place. The Mughal dynasties के जितने भी और भी जो relatives थे, they all went to the Dargah of Nizamuddin Auliya to take refuge. But it was all bloodshed and killing, and people were just killed and murdered on the streets by the British and their forces. तो दिल्ली को रिकैप्चर करने का जो सिलसिला है वो जून से शुरू हुआ और सितंबर में ख़त्म हुआ. ब्लडशेड दोनों तरफ बहुत थी, और ऑल्सो बिकॉज द रेबेल्स दे केम टू सेफगार्ड दिल्ली एंड टू प्रोटेक्ट दिल्ली. और this was the time when Bahadur Shah Zafar who was the last Mughal emperor, he was captured, and he was his sons were also, who were the heir apparents, they were murdered by the British officials, and he was captured and he was sent, he was exiled to Rangoon, which is in present day Myanmar. और बहुत ही फेमस एक शेर है जो बहादुर शाह ज़फ़र ने लिखा है, क्योंकि वो अपने लास्ट मॉनसून पैलेस या समर पैलेस जो कि मेहरौली में है, ज़फ़र महल, वहाँ चाहते थे कि वो वहाँ दफन हो. तो उनका जो ये शेर है वो ये है कि कितना बदनसीब है ज़फ़र कि दफन के लिए 2 गज ज़मीन भी ना मिली कोई यार में. तो even in the end he always wanted to be buried in Delhi, in its beloved Delhi, and that fort that जो वो है ज़फ़र महल है, that is adjacent to the very famous Sufi dargah, चिश्ती दरगाह of बख्तियार काकी, और वो हमारे पहले सूफ़ी सेंट थे दिल्ली के. तो वो एक प्रॉक्सिमिटी चाहते थे कि मैं I'm just next to the Sufi saint, and he wanted to be in his beloved Delhi, but sadly he was sent to Rangoon, and he was when he died he was buried there.
And even though Zafar Mahal was the summer palace of the last Mughal emperor, the palace fell to ruins, and nobody remembers what Zafar Mahal was, where Zafar Mahal is, till it was rediscovered recently. And अभी भी वहाँ पे settlements आ गए हैं काफ़ी. पैलेस जो था उसकी encroachment काफ़ी हो गई है, and people don't really know what this monument is anymore.
Also because one of the main reasons is that people who were the inhabitants when the partition took place, they moved to the other side, and जो वहाँ से आए उनको उस जगह के बारे में ज़्यादा अंदाज़ा नहीं है. जो वहाँ जो पहले रहते थे उनको ज़्यादा अंदाज़ा होगा. बट that is a sad reality.
My initial point being कि जैसे even other places that housed a lot of refugees, that place still had this thing कि अच्छा ये फलानी जगह थी या फिर ये वो फलानी जगह थी. बट ज़फ़र महल के साथ उसका नाम ही मिट गया था, is what I was wanting to portray.
Gangetic Plain में भी it was very difficult for the British to reconquer the area. They tried to do it village by village, but it was very difficult because the whole countryside was very hostile towards them. Because यहाँ पे उनको realize होता है कि they're not just dealing with the sepoys but also the entire village. Almost like 3/4 of the population, according to one of the officials for he states that almost like the 3/4 of the male were into rebellion, and it took a lot of time. March 1858 tak they could reconquer it. Especially in Uttar Pradesh, where mostly the British used a lot of physical force, gigantic physical force to reconquer the lost areas. But in Uttar Pradesh, many parts they tried to act very slyly, I would say. They especially जहाँ ज़मींदार जो peasants वो united थे, they were rebelling. तो ये बोलना ज़मींदार को कि हम आपको ये लैंड दे देंगे, आपकी वापस कर देंगे जो हमने आपसे छीन ली थी, if you stop rebelling against us. So the ones who were still rebelling against them, they had to, they were displaced, and many of them ran towards Nepal, and they eventually died of illness. And the ones who took their side, they were rewarded because they were loyal. Even when we talk about the riyasats and the principalities, the one that were against the British, whether it's Jhansi ki Rani, Kanpur ki jo Nana Sahib the, चाहे वो Mughals थे, also many other Nawabs and many other principalities, the अवध थे, तो वो जो रिबेल कर गए उनके अगेंस्ट वो तो खाक में मिल गए, उनका कोई नामो निशान नहीं था. बट जो उनके लॉयल थे वो आपको अभी भी दिखेंगे, एंड दे स्टिल रिटेनिंग देयर होल्ड एंड देयर नॉमिनल होल्ड ओवर द लैंड.
The next topic is images of the revolt. Now, the way we've already mentioned before that what we know of the revolt is primarily through the sources of the British. Whatever we have from the rebel side is very less. Mostly they are ishtihars or newsletters, or sometimes we find letters that they wrote to each other, but that is more or less, that is what we have of the rebel side from the revolt. Most of what we gauge of the rebels, their motives and all that, is taken till now from the accounts of the British, because the British left a lot of source material on what was happening. So not only do you have official records, but you also have personal records and autobiographies, oftentimes letters that were written. And through this we can also see, through the official records, we can see the changing perceptions of the British that they had on what was happening over the years. And that is something that gives us an idea about the rebels. So many of these records were collected, and now they form volumes on mutiny records, and they tell us about the time, of course from a British perspective, but even so we get an idea about the time. We also get to see the changing perceptions of the British on towards the people, the assessments that were made, the memos that were written, and we get all of that knowledge from these records. In addition, there were also stories of the revolt that were written in British newspapers, and we mentioned before how the perception of the common public, of the common British public, also played a very important role in in how the British then dealt with the rebellion. And a lot of, of course you have a lot of stories and a lot of text, but accompanying these were paintings and sketches that were made during this time of the rebellion. Now these pictorial sources, or these pictures, they were commissioned by the British, or they were painted by the British, and they saw the British as the victors, as the saviors. So these images, they sought to provoke a different range of emotions from whoever was viewing them, and most of the time it was the British public that was viewing them. Now there are several examples that are given in the book, and we will be discussing them. The first is the relief of Lucknow. The relief of Lucknow was painted by Thomas Jones Barker in 1859. When the rebel forces besieged Lucknow, Henry Lawrence, who was the commissioner of Lucknow, collected the Christian population and took refuge in the heavily fortified residency. Lawrence was killed, but the residency continued to be defended under the command of Colonel Inglis. 25th September को James Outram and Henry Havelock arrived. They cut through the rebel forces and reinforced the British garrisons. 20 days later, Colin Campbell, जो कि न्यू कमांडर ऑफ ब्रिटिश फोर्सेस इन इंडिया उनका अपॉइंटमेंट था, he came with the forces and rescued the besieged British garrison. In British accounts, the siege of Lucknow became a story of survival, heroic resistance, and the ultimate triumph of British power. Barker's painting, as we can see, celebrates the moment of Campbell's entry. सेंटर ऑफ द कैनवस में आपको जो ब्रिटिश हीरोज हैं वो दिखते हैं, जो कि कैम्पबेल, आउट्रम और हैवलॉक हैं. द जेस्चर्स ऑफ द हैंड्स ऑफ दोज अराउंड लीड द स्पेक्टेटर्स आइज टुवर्ड्स द सेंटर, एंड द हीरोज देमसेल्व्स स्टैंड ऑन अ ग्राउंड दैट इज वेल लिट. जो फोरग्राउंड है और जो डैमेज रेजिडेंसी है, दे आर समवॉट इन शैडोज, and the residency of course is in the background. The dead and injured in the foreground are testimony to the suffering during the siege, while the triumphant figures of horses in the middle ground emphasize the fact that British power and control had been re-established. British public के लिए these kind of images were a they brought a sense of normalcy. They conveyed the message that the rebellion had been quelled and everything was normal, and that the British were victorious.
So newspapers always have a very important, play a very important role to shape people's mind. Even today we can see that. And उस वक्त भी यही था कि how they portraying an event, how they portraying a particular rebellion, and how they portrayed particularly the rebel of 1857. Especially they showed how the violence was struck towards the women and children. And back in England, people were demanding sort of revenge against them. We need to protect our women and children from the rebellions. They are barbaric and they are creating nuisance and all. So newspapers play a very important role. How to portray women, how to portray a particular incident in a way showing themselves, the country or the people who belong to their country as better off, and they are just helping out people, and to show the rebellions in a very bad light. So the painting that they painted to enact this whole situation where women were petrified, it's called In Memoriam. In Memoriam was painted by Joseph Noel Paton 2 years after the mutiny. You can see English women and children huddled in a circle, looking helpless and innocent, seemingly waiting for the inevitable dishonor, violence and death. In Memoriam does not show gory violence, it only suggests it. It actually stirs up the spectator's imagination and seeks to provoke anger and fury. It represents the rebels as violent and brutish, even though they remain invisible in the picture. In the background, you can see the British rescue forces arriving as saviors.
But also, in any uprising of this sort, women unfortunately are targeted, and then they are raped and they are violated, and then that is not
right.
Yeah. I'm very happy for the 1857 rebellion, first war.
But these English women also, they have also perpetrated various racial and this thing towards other women.
But then, rape is not
rape is not announced. Kill them.
हाँ. खत्म करो ना. ये क्या है? Raping, violating? No. Murder. Direct.
But in any uprising, whether it is Indian uprising or foreign uprising or India against the foreign rule uprising, women are always subjected to violence, and that too in the form of dishonoring them. So that is not right in any way, and that should not be the way to fight fight for yourself.
So even though we celebrate 1857 as the first war of independence, we can also condone the acts of violence towards women, and both these things can exist simultaneously. In another set of sketches and paintings, we see women in a completely different light. Here we see them as heroic and as fighting back the rebel forces and really putting their strength forward. One such example is that of Miss Wheeler. She stands firmly at the center, defending her honor, single-handedly killing the attacking rebels. Of course, because this is a British representation, the rebels are demonized. Here, 4 burly men with swords and guns are shown attacking a woman. The woman's struggle to save her honor and her life, in fact, is also represented as having a deeper religious connotation. It is a battle to save the honor of Christianity. The book lying on the floor is the Bible. To the British public as well, when these images were, circulated widely in the newspaper, it created waves of anger and shock, and then all of a sudden it was okay to retaliate and to be violent and to, extract vengeance from the rebels, however it was done. So it was okay to violently repress the rebellions, because, that is how the British public were also swayed with the imagery that was supplied to them. So with the backing of the British people, the British government or the British colonial government also then went full force in quelling the rebellion. In another image that is titled Justice, we see an allegorical female figure of justice with a sword in her hand and a shield in the other. Her posture is aggressive, her face expresses rage and the desire for revenge. She is trampling sepoys under her feet while a mass of Indian women with children cower in fear. It was as if justice demanded that the challenge to British honor and power be met ruthlessly. ऐसे ही काफ़ी images थे that were circulated in newspapers, and this gave strength to the anger of the British people, who in turn gave strength to the British colonial government to repress the rebellion as they felt fit. This urge for vengeance was also met by, dealing harsh punishments to the rebel forces, which was oftentimes death. So they were either shot or they were hung from the gallows, and then the pictures of this was also widely circulated.
At that point, during that period, the Governor General Canning, he's sort of said that we should be lenient towards the sepoys so that we can bring back the confidence of that was there and the trust that was there. But he was mocked by the British journalists and the British newspapers and the press, and the photo that was made is as follows. You can see that Canning is shown as a looming father figure with his protective hand over the head of a sepoy who still holds an unsheathed sword in one hand and a dagger in the other, both dripping with blood. जब हम 20th century में आते हैं, when we were fighting with the British, especially in the 1900s, when we had various organizations that were formed and they were fighting, so a lot of the imagery was drawn from the events of 1857. The event of 1857 was actually celebrated as the first war of independence, where people from all walks of life and people from all religion and caste, they came together against this alien force.
Art and literature has in fact played a more important role than history in keeping the accounts and the heroes of 1857 alive in the memory of people. Because we have such scant historical records, specifically from the rebel side, art and literature is what helped safeguard the memory of the rebels and of the rebellions in the minds of the people, and this created this was fodder for when India was fighting for independence in a century later. The heroes of 1857 were seen as people who were fighting a righteous war against the oppressors, to do away with the oppressors, and these figures were then further immortalized. For example, Subhadra Kumari Chauhan has written about Jhansi ki Rani, "Khoob ladi mardani, wo to Jhansi wali Rani thi." So this image of the Rani, of a female figure. She's a woman, but she's very masculine in her power. She's wielding a sword and she's riding a horse and she's fighting off the oppressors. And her imagery has it created a nationalist fervor. It added to it, and I think somewhere we subconsciously also learned from how the rebellion was portrayed in the British press, and I think we took on those elements, and then we circulated that when it was our time for our own war of independence, where we circulated the imagery of people, or particularly Rani Ki Jhansi, or even other people who fought for their own independence during the rebellion of 1857, through art and through poetry that was written about them, and that brought the people together the way that it did during 1857. Because 1857 also, वहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि that communities joined together against an oppressive regime, and that is what was again happening in 1947.
Now we also have certain books, the eyewitness account we had mentioned earlier. So one is by Zahir Dehelvi. He had written Dastan-e-Gadar, and then you have Begamat Ke Aansu also, where the Mughal women, the household women who were separated from each other after the 1857, how they lived their lives, their eyewitness accounts. So we have access to these accounts that tell us about the horrors of 1857 revolt and the pain they went through, the pain the common people went through when the British were reconquering Delhi and other areas.
I think sometimes we consider art and literature to not be historical writing because oftentimes, see, art and literature, it can be a figment of imagination as well, but oftentimes through art and through literature you are able to record the people's history. So something that could not be recorded officially as, you know, a proper historical document, that has stayed with people, you know, throughout time, just because they remember it and they sang songs about it, or they made stories about it to, you know, tell their kids, and then they in turn told their kids, and these songs were, you know, sung from generation to generation, and that is how history also traveled. So when you think about history, it's not just books and records and some archives, but, you know, your everyday lives are recorded.
Yeah.
You just have to look for it.
So in this chapter, we get to know about how the 1857 rebel happened. It took place somewhere on the 10th of May, and because there was a cartridge that was supposedly coated with the fat of cow and pig, and they didn't like that because that was against their religion, because the sepoys comprised of Hindus and Muslims, and how then they went to the last Mughal Badshah Bahadur Shah Zafar seeking his blessings, and that we are going to start with a rebellion, we need your blessings, and how the rebels spread across with the help of people, common people joined in, they became a part of the rebellion. It was just not the sepoys but the common people as well.
We saw why it spread, we saw why you know, people were unhappy with the British, what led to a mistrust, and then we also see how the role pictures played in quelling the rebellion, how it played a role in shaping the idea of the rebellion, particularly to the British masses, because that is where this, you know, sort of like an emotional backing came from, because they felt that, you know, it's okay to do anything to, you know, get justice back on what the rebels did to the British forces. And then because they had this emotional backing, the British then, you know, just unfurled their full force into quelling the rebellion by the only means, which was death.
I hope that you have liked today's episode. Please like, share and subscribe, and keep watching Tariq.